Hi, I'm David Charlton, and this is Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast. 5 minutes for a series of 10 episodes on a Tuesday for those interested in football or soccer and who want to play their best more often. Hi there. Today, we're going to assume that you're a footballer and your form hasn't been up to scratch, that you've not been up to the standard that you'd hoped for, that maybe your team isn't performing the way you would expect to. And to spectators, both you and the team, well, maybe you're below hot and cold. They're not sure who's going to turn up from one week to the next. As a result, you're feeling a little sensitive to criticism. If a teammate calls you out, you've been known to bite back. You don't take too kindly to if your coach gets on your case. So today, we're going to explore this more. We're going to think about your reactions to such criticism and what goes on between your ears, how you construct your reactions. And I'll also give you some ideas on how you can overcome the difficult emotions that come with criticism. So here's a situation. You've had a poor training session, your touch isn't there, you've made more mistakes than you normally do. Your coach notices, lets you know, sometimes with a glare, sometimes with some nice positive encouragement, and then sometimes they'll react with a negative tone. They'll be quite harsh because they're trying to drive up your standards. And as a result, you're simmering underneath. You go back home, you're irritated, you're feeling tense, and feeling a little bit sad too. Maybe your partner notices something isn't right, so he or she goes to try and give you a hug. They try to show their support. You accept the hug, but it doesn't do a great deal for you. You're still simmering. And then a few seconds later, your partner asks about a job that you'd agreed to do. You'd agreed to call your dad about Wednesday night. Basically, your partner has some plans to go out, and you both needed your dad's support. And despite the question being asked casually, it really sparks outrage in you. You're irritated, you're tense, and you snap back. No, you were well aware that she'd wanted you to speak to your dad about this favour. But you were in your own head. You were in a different place. It really wasn't important to you at that time. You're angry at the way that you've been performing and training. You'd been criticised and you'd had a poor match last week too. This tiny little task had added to your stress. Now, as I mentioned, it is a tiny little task. It was something that you'd agreed to do and you were feeling bad about not actually doing it too. And because you were sensitive to criticism, it made you even more sensitive. And where does that come from? Maybe if you take yourself back to your youth, when you were made to feel guilty because you hadn't done homework from your parents, or because you hadn't put the hard yards in training, and your dad was on your case. There's likely to be a whole host of reasons going back to your youth why you might feel like this. So that's right, we're saying you've gone back to your childhood. Certainly in the way that you've responded, the kid in you has reacted. The way that we react to events like this often is at a subconscious level. It's driven from past events and experiences in our hard drive. So how do you go about changing your reactions moving forwards? That's what we're going to look at now. I'm sure you've heard me talk about self-awareness. I bang on about it on this podcast an awful lot. So self-awareness here is critical. So stopping and observing your mind, noticing how you're reacting, noticing those quick judgments that you make. This is what we need to do. And obviously it's not easy, especially when the mind is in overdrive. You know, it might be like the experience of waking up after a bad dream when you're in a frenzy. It's not a nice feeling at all, and it can be quite scary if you think it is real. So let's think about the solution. I'd recommend that you stop playing in your mind that bad pass or the tone of the voice of your coach who had a pop at you. These are external things that you can't control, and they're only going to spark more and more outrage in your mind and in your body. So what you could do is think about the situation as if it's happening to you from a friend's perspective or a family member's perspective, because right now your mind is taking over, your beliefs, your experience. So be objective. That's the key here. So who's a damn good friend to you? Or who would you describe as a kind and caring person? Who has your back on occasions when things get difficult? Is it your mum? Maybe your grandmother even? Think about difficult situations that you've had in the past when they've helped you. What have they said? What have they done? How did they calm you down? What was the tone like in their voice? And keep going a little bit deeper now. Scratch under the surface. Dousing those flames of anger and frustration, it might take a while, it might take some patience. Maybe you want to think about a horror movie or a scary film that had you or a friend jumping around. Now see yourself laughing at yourself, or see someone else laughing at themselves. Think about the responses to this film. You know, it's best not to regard situations where you've been criticised as good or bad. After all, forming such judgments often then sparks our emotion. Whether that's judging others, how dare they speak to me like that, or judging ourselves, that bad pass. It's only going to spark self-criticism. Finding ways to recognise that it is what it is, that your hard drive, your mind has decided to hijack you, can be really, really helpful. Then acceptance, or compassion, or self-compassion, they're really, really good skills to learn. And these suggestions, well, yes, they do relate to criticism from others, but the reality is here, they can be used in many, many situations to help us. That's right, help us calm down and relax, as long as we're open to it. And it's important to realise we're not talking about being soft here. In the macho world of football, when egos take place, that word soft can come out. This is not the goal. The goal here is to find a healthy way to respond. That's right, to respond to strong and difficult emotions. So that we're not dwelling on it for long periods of time and spoiling our relationships, spoiling our days. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. For more tips and tricks, please do sign up to the regular newsletter that I send out to footballers called The X Factor. It's proven really, really popular with all sorts of kind words from people who've signed up. Enjoy your day.